Ladies and gentlemen, I am Yusril, the game is World of Warships. Welcome to another guest replay. The map is Okinawa, the game mode is Domination, and today we are riding with Master Ollie. That's a name that might already be familiar to some of you. He's a regular guest on Stuntman9630's What the Ship podcast, and he's also popped up in a couple of my videos as well. He's also occasionally roped in an effort to teach me how to battleship, which so far, it has to be said, isn't going too well. There's a reason you don't normally see me in anything but destroyers and light cruisers. Speaking of light cruisers, he is riding in the Tier IX British light cruiser Neptune. This was actually a paper design. It was originally conceived in 1942 as a light anti-air cruiser, something similar to Atlanta. But there was a change of leadership at the Admiralty, and the new First Sea Lord looked at the design and said, "Sod that, I want a bigger version of the Edinburgh." The Neptune was conceived as an improved version of the Town-class cruisers. She was never actually built. The war basically ended before she was necessary, and by that point Britain was virtually bankrupt anyway, couldn't really have afforded new warships even if we'd been able to justify building them. All of which is completely academic to Master Ollie as he closes in on point A. The majority of his team is down pushing B and C, so they'll hold the line pretty well, and he's just been detected, and oh crap, that's a Yamato. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Right, decelerate, turn to bleed a bit more speed, pop the smoke screen once you get down below 18 knots, momentum takes him out of the first cloud, but he manages to stay in the second cloud. That would have been a really bad moment if the old smoke bug hadn't been squashed, and he starts popping shots out at the Dai-Sankan, which would normally be a complete waste of ammo at this range, but British AP is a little bit strange, at least on the light cruisers. It has got a very fast arming time, so you'll notice that instead of getting overpens on the Yamato's superstructure, he is in fact getting regular penetrations for 1/3 damage, and well, he's bagged himself an early 5,000, and he's actually persuaded the Yamato to back off, which is a bit of a surprise. You'd have thought the Yamato would have ignored it, angled up and muscled in, but there you go. However, something else spotted him. It wasn't the Hipper, which means there's a destroyer lurking, so he's got his torpedo detection going in the shape of Hydro, and there we go. 2 launches, 1 of 5, 1 of 4, given they were close to the island, that's probably 2 of 5. So chances are the launching ship is, yep, there we go, behind the island, we've got a Shimakaze lurking. Friendly Armagi has also seen the smoke cloud, decided to dive in, manages to torpedo beat through the Shimakaze salvo, but that Hipper is getting worryingly close, and the smoke cloud has been going for about a minute at this stage, so it is about to expire, which means that Ollie really needs to start motoring, as fun as it is to keep raining armour-piercing death upon this Hipper's superstructure and upper belt. You'll notice he's not getting much in the way of citadels or main belt hits. 6 inches a bit anemic, but it's time to get moving, fun's over, and who put that battleship there? Oh. Okay, this is a little bit awkward. I'm sorry, would you kindly back up a bit? Please. Oh wait, no, the smoke's faded and that Shimakaze is looking right at us. Oh dear. Right, get the guns going again. 5 hits from the first broadside, knocks out the Shimakaze's boiler. Second salvo goes a little bit forward because of the speed bleeding, but frankly, the little speed freak has had it. Busted boiler, staying down the barrels of far too many 6-inch and 5-inch guns to count. Kermanek goes down. Ollie has got himself a bit of manoeuvring room off the Armagi and turns away from Nussvein. The question is, did that Shimakaze get his torpedoes? Yeah, there's his 3rd launch. The other key question really would have been whether or not the Shimakaze had had enough time to reload, but I don't think he quite had a full torpedo boat build there, or there's been a lot more than 5 torpedoes coming down the channel towards Nussvein and Ollie. I suspect that Nussvein knows exactly how much he messed up your escape route, Ollie, but hey, you got away with it. Kinda. Anyhow, few cheeky shots into North Carolina's superstructure, just volley some artillery arcing nicely over the cherry blossom trees. At least I assume those are cherry blossom trees. It's kind of hard to tell even at 1440p. Right, anyhow, some cheap shots into the North Carolina superstructure notwithstanding. We've got lock on Geronimo 71 in his Edinburgh. He's broadside on, 10 kilometres. Now that, a 6-inch AP can citadel, but Geronimo has spotted the threat. He's started motoring, and the acceleration of the British light cruisers gets him out of danger. And ow, that hurt. That was a 15-inch round from the Tirpitz off to the left. But Ollie's more immediate concern is Tirpitz's nasty older sister. That is Bartolo 926, and he's in the Bismarck. He's also closing in. Ollie's dumped his torpedoes. He hasn't used the precision shot mode because, well, it's a marginal shot at best. That Bismarck could easily turn and evade, and he didn't really have the time to calculate the individual shots. Get another broadside out. He's running off fragmented line of sight data at best, because Nusswein is ducking behind that island, again, trying to avoid the Bismarck's 15-inch guns. He does get one hit, however, and that's actually a problem. He's only got one hit, which means Bismarck has turned in, which means he knows Ollie's torpedo tubes are empty, and means that he is charging the smoke, so Ollie needs to motor right now, because if that Bismarck closes down to about 4 kilometres, yep, there we go, 4.5 kilometres, the Bismarck would have been able to pop its hydro, even the nerfed version it got in the latest patch, and catch Ollie stationary broadside in the smoke, and that would have hurt. Ollie saw the danger, however. He managed to motor into the channel, and he's inside the gimbal limits of his portside launchers. This time he's using precision shot, and he just ripple fires off all 8 and empties the tubes. Gets a cheap fire on the Bismarck, courtesy of his secondaries, little bit of armour piercing, and he manages to duck behind the island. That's only a temporary respite, however, but Bartolo gets a little bit greedy. He turns back into the track in the hopes of getting his forward turrets into play. Does quite realise his danger in the last second, but he can't turn fast enough at that point. He's committed, eats torpedoes and sinks to get Ollie's second kill. Up to the north, however, the enemy Tirpitz is in trouble. He's surrounded by one Tirpitz, and there's an Armagi, a Shimakaze, Ollie. Yeah, this should be an easy seal club, shouldn't it? Except, wait. Oh dear. Okay, that's Dr. Grinspoon 183 down at the hands of Super 77777777777777777. However, that does leave the enemy Tirpitz in a rather bad position. He's got a Shimakaze on his bow. He's got Ollie, again, peppering the superstructure. And at least he's trying to. You can see those shots going just a little bit too high until he finds his range and adjusts. And, of course, the Armagi is going to put 16-inch guns into his broadside. And at that kind of range, well, Turtleback might help slightly, but it's still going to hurt. However, that's not his principal concern because, well, the Shimakaze's put its torpedoes in the water, and unfortunately the stereo did not have enough power assigned. He eats one and floods out. Farewell, Tirpitz, we hardly knew ye. Ollie heads back into A. He's completed his turn round the islets, and he's now restarted the cap. Right as the second Bismarck comes into play, and the fighters from the Taiho pick him up. Which means that, yep, it's smoke time once again. Turn over, dump the speed, cut the throttle, pop the launchers, and hope you can do it before Oscar clears the headland and fires his 15-inch guns. And no, he didn't, but luckily he dumped enough speed that he only ate a couple of overpens. Meanwhile, Braber is in the hipper. He's popped up again. And you'd think by now he'd have realised that where he's going is not particularly healthy. He knows there's an Armagi over there. He probably knows about the Shimakaze if he's got last contact markers. And of course he's seen the rain of death coming from the very angry smoke cloud in his left flank. Unfortunately, he doesn't quite realise how bad the situation is until it's too late. He starts turning to break away, but this isn't going to help him. Ollie doesn't need main belt hits after all. Superstructure will do just fine with this fast fused AP, and that's what he's aiming for, putting round after round out. And with the Neptune's rate of fire, unfortunately, that hipper isn't feeling particularly hip. Another kill for Ollie, that's number 3. Meanwhile, Oscar has crossed the channel and is also heading into the Valley of Death, I think is the only term for it at this point. Again, Ollie is taking advantage of the terrain. He's lobbing cheeky shots over into the Bismarck superstructure and getting, well, you can see the hit indicators on the right. The Bismarck is pretty decently angled, and since Ollie's firing blind, he's having a hard time judging the range. But it's not stopped him getting another 10 penetrating hits as he switches his attention over to Geronimo. Geronimo is valiantly doing his best. He's trying to make a grab into point A and secure the enemy's control point advantage, but it's not exactly working, courtesy of all things of an allied Bismarck, ASO 1234, who's forced him to break off, turn away and smoke up. Meanwhile, Ollie has to jam the rudder over to starboard to avoid Doc Hunter 45. He's switching his attention back over to Oscar for want of a better target. Again, blind fire, so a bit of guesstimation on the range. Keeps peeking over to check the shell angle and then resetting his elevation. Not having all that much luck, but he's found his range now. And again, another couple of cheeky salvos. The Shimikaze's torpedo spread goes wide, and Ollie is just popping round after round over the hill and possibly denuding a few of the Emperor's favourite cherry trees in the process. I believe that was considered a crime in Imperial Japan. Not sure what the other allies are going to make of him taking that kill on the Bismarck, but there you go. With A now secure, and a good chunk of the enemy fleet at the bottom of the Valley of Doom, Ollie's run into the big problem about point A. You've got great cover, but that same great cover, this huge island to the south and east, means you have a difficult time getting re-engaged with the enemy once you've secured point A. You've got to go right the way round, track round, and that takes several minutes to get re-engaged. So he's going to amuse himself by shooting at the Taiho's aircraft. And well, it's not really hidden, but it's not very well advertised difference between Edinburgh and Neptune isn't just the size, it's that Neptune's main battery is dual purpose. Those 6-inch AP spammers of doom, yeah, they're also anti-air guns, and if you fit a Neptune up with manual control of anti-air, it doesn't have defensive fire, and to be honest, it doesn't really need it. It does horrible things to equal or lower tiered aircraft. However, that's all academic. The aircraft are gone, but Geronimo 71's been forced out of his now expired smoke. And it's, well, let's be honest here, it's not looking too good for him, is it? He's got Asso's Bismarck off to the west firing at him with 15 inches, and Ollie has also picked him up as well. So he's doing the only thing he can, trying to disengage and make a run for it, but it's not going to succeed. And he can't really make a gunfight of it as well. Ollie's got 5 times the health, the same number of guns, and, well, Edinburgh's armour won't stop even 6-inch shells. 5 kills, Kraken unleashed, and he artillery beats the final salvo just as a final insult. That leaves him clear to push down into point B. The only serious threats left are, of course, the enemy Fletcher, which is still lurking somewhere. There it is, in fact, enemy air. Well, friendly air, sorry, have picked up its enemy air from the Fletcher's perspective, of course, but we can just see Tom C-842 off to the south, getting the good old high explosive delivery service from the friendly Essex's bombers. Gets 1, second salvo comes down. Ooh, that was nasty. That was 1 solid hit at least, and he's on fire. That said, is he going to be able to control it? Questionable in the extreme. We lost contact before we saw whether or not he could control that fire. There's also the Chapayev. The Taiho is lurking somewhere, we think off to the northeast, because that's where the aircraft were heading to rearm. And of course the Dai Senkan Yamato, which is going to wreck Ollie if it gets a solid shot at him, angling or no angling. So, same trick as always, dump the smoke screen, get point be into capture, and the Shimakaze has found the Taiho. Which means, of course, that the Taiho has found the Shimakaze, or at least knows it's in the general area, courtesy of the planes. However, they're more interested in Lusveit's Amagi, and that is a decision that is going to cost the Taiho's captain later on. Ollie pulls in his Confederate. He's still raining fire on the Yamato, still abusing its superstructure, and almost immediately he bags his high caliber as well. So that's the rampage trifecta. Again, look at where his shots are landing. He's not really hitting the Yamato's armoured portions, and every time he does, it either bounces or just shatters. But whenever he gets a superstructure hit into the Yamato's pagoda mast, he gets a full penetration, he gets third damage, and, well, you can see how fast he's racked it up, but he's got a more immediate problem. We just got a very quick glimpse of the Fletcher closing in. Ollie's completed the cap of B, of course, but, well, that Fletcher could be a problem. It can keep him spotted for the Yamato's main guns, it can launch torpedoes, and, well, even its 5-inch guns can be a problem if it gets close enough to penetrate. Which is not nearly as close as you might think, but we saw it making one quick turn. Ollie realises that it's now starting to get danger close. You can see it started to get into the cap point at B because it's thrown that into contention. So, start motoring again. Gets bow on, anticipating the torpedoes, and also shell fire from the Yamato. There's the Fletcher. Artillery solution plotted. Rounds out. First broadside hits, second broadside out from the stern guns as he continues his turn. Bang! One dead Fletcher, kill number 6. He's still being picked up by the Taiho's fighters, but that is hopefully a temporary concern. There we go, problem solved. So it's now back to abusing the Yamato's superstructure. Fletcher's torpedoes... Oh dear. Okay, he's probably going to be able to ride that. Yep. Takes one hit for 15,000. No flooding critically, so he doesn't need to blow his damage control. Gets the repair party into play, and manages to deal with the Fletcher's parting shot, and indeed heals out almost all the damage. And then goes back to abusing the Yamato's superstructure. It's on 7,000 health, 5,000 health. Briefly switches away, looking for the Chapayev. Doesn't really see it. Gets a couple more shots. Is he going to get the kill on the Yamato? Is this going to be kill number 7? 345 health. Come on, just one more hit. One more hit. No such luck. Yamato breaks contact. Meanwhile, Taiho, however, is in pretty bad shape and is in fact now sunk. Standard CZ getting himself a liquidator on that one, having chased the enemy carrier pretty much across the map, dodging who knows how many airstrikes along the way. The Yamato has healed back another 10,000 health. He's still not in great shape, of course, because, well, the enemy carrier is gone, so Makabu now has no fighter cover. And there's a friendly Essex who really wants to say hi. Of more immediate concern, however, is the Chapayev. Ollie's going to pick him up in a second. We can see him on the minimap already. But, well, you never know. That was a very tempting Yamato. Always nice to whack the pinata a few more times. First broadside out to the unsuspecting Men-3. Second broadside out. First rounds come down. He gets a couple of penetrations. Second broadside comes down, a few more. Third broadside's adjusted. The Chapayev is trying to turn, but, well, he's well and truly had it. Bang, kill number 7. Only thing that is left is the Yamato. It's just out of range, so frustrating. Here come the dive bombers from the Essex. 18 bundles of burning love. Well, the first salvo comes down. The Yamato starts burning, but it's not going to matter. Here comes the second salvo, and done. After all of that, it's probably not a surprise that Ollie did pretty well out of the game. He landed 423 main battery hits and 3 torpedo hits for 224,000 damage. That turned into the rampage trifecta, 13,000 XP, give or take, and just shy of 750,000 credits. Base XP was 3,420, which I don't think is the highest I've ever seen in a game of World of Warships, but it's certainly right up there. A moment of silence, please, for that poor Shimakaze he abused earlier on. 379 XP, I mean, ouch, just ouch. I don't think the poor guy did anything beyond token damage. However, Ollie is going to need a fresh load of ammunition and probably new gun barrels as well, because he fired almost 1,200 main battery shots. He fired 116 rounds from the secondary batteries, or at least his gunners did, but they need to lay off the run. They only scored 8 hits. And of course, 3 torpedoes out of 15 into the Bismarck. And then you look at the damage numbers across the top. 57,500 into the Yamato, pretty much entirely from superstructure and upper belt hits. 59,000 into that first Bismarck. Okay, some 36,000 of that came out of the 3 torpedo hits, but that was a relatively short artillery engagement. He still did 23,000 damage, again, from the superstructure and the upper belt. The Hipper, again, 24,000 damage. The Edinburgh took 20,000. That Shimakaze we won't talk about. The Chapayev and the second Bismarck and the Fletcher, of course, all were pretty badly beaten up by the time Ollie got his teeth into them. But the game does illustrate one key thing about the British light cruisers. You have to relearn your gunnery a little. It's similar with targeting German battleships. Going for the waterline is often a waste of time. If you go for the superstructure against heavier ships in the British cruisers, you will get much better results, because that fast fused AP is unlikely to overpenetrate, and it's much more likely to get through lighter armoured sections if you aim that little bit higher. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been Yusril. That has been Master Ollie in the Tier IX Neptune, having, I think, one of the best games he'll ever have in World of Warships. And until next time, farewell.